got to start the Lord Meher, page 1744, online version, 1936. But the master and his disciples were hard to fathom and to please for someone with limited faith and understanding like Ghana, as can be seen from these passages from her memoirs. Owing to Baba's extreme restlessness, more than curious for a mystic, and to the fact that as hostess, I had much of the actual work to do to make 14 people comfortable during their overnight stay, I could not register my thoughts, and I did not allow my feelings to interfere with the Hausfrau, the housewife work. I was busy every second, running from the kitchen to Baba's disciples, from the garage to the housekeeper, who complained that our cook had lost her head, while my secretary in the meantime was suspended on the telephone for the master's orders. With this rush, nervousness, lack of serenity, I could not help have the clear impression that Baba was an exceptionally capricious prima donna, and his disciples were playing the part of the typical enslaved accompanist, secretary, and maids, while Norina Machiavelli acted the role of the Italian. All were extremely excited and scared to death of displeasing Baba. They waited at his door like a dog sitting on the floor, on the stairs, in order to respond more quickly at his call. And when a call came, they rushed in so quickly in military style that I trembled for any of my antiques that might be in their way. Like, scroll the page, please. Hardly had they started breakfast, then with a half-consumed piece of toast in their mouths, they rushed to answer their master. The broches actually had to be warmed 6 times before they got a chance to finish their coffee. The luncheon hour was changed 8 times, the first order having been for 1 o'clock, but we ate at 11:30, and for this reason, the food was scarcely up to Galuis standards, for my chef could not possibly have prepared this complicated vegetarian menu with her usual finesse at an hour's notice, the last change of time having come through just after 11 o'clock. And the cause of all this trouble was that Baba wanted to go to the movies to see his favorite entertainment, a gay musical comedy picturing the life of Florence Ziegfeld, the great Ziegfeld. After Baba left at midnight, when I finally got to my room, I stayed there for 3 long days to recuperate from that hectic, unhealthy, under the whip, holy life. Next page. The day after their departure, when my headache had died away, I thought that God's presence, God's love in our heart and in our home should bring peace and serenity, not fear, panic, the feeling of hurry or physical diseases. Had I not seen Baba, I would not have lost my spiritual, mental, and physical forces for several days. But even under those circumstances, I did not wish to judge, especially as Baba's kindness to me was great. Footnote. Oh, maybe we'll skip the footnote. I don't see it. Baba left Galuis at 10 p.m. The staff was summoned to bid him farewell. One of them, perhaps Ghana's companion, You know what? Let me try. Okay. Picture. Baba left Galewis at 10 p.m. The staff was summoned to bid him farewell. One of them, perhaps Ghana's companion, housekeeper, or private secretary, could not control her tears. Baba spent that night at Alfredo and Consuelo Sidi's apartment in Paris. The Sidis had come to Galewis, and were also well to do. And unlike Ghana Walska, they became two of Baba's main contacts in Paris. In the early morning of 10 November, after meeting a few new persons, Baba left Paris and arrived in Marseille at 10 a.m. He and the group checked into the Hotel Terminus, Baba staying in room 303, and the others in rooms 304, 305. Baba had been particularly anxious to reach Marseille, as he stated he had a spiritual appointment to keep. As soon as they arrived, instead of unpacking, Baba asked to be taken to the scroll to the city park. When they arrived, he began walking back and forth on a gravel path with Narina and Elizabeth on either side of him. A young Frenchman was sitting on a park bench on the other side of a small lawn. Bob eventually strolled around the lawn, walking directly past the young man, who stood up and bowed his head in a reverential way to Baba as he passed. Baba then walked away, explaining that the young man was one of his borrowed spiritual agents working for him on the inner planes. Boarding the Viceroy of India at 3 in the afternoon on Thursday, 12 November 1936, Baba sailed from Marseille for India with Kaka and Chanji. The original plan had been to fly again from Baghdad to Karachi, but seats could not be procured. Passage on the Viceroy of India had been fully booked 6 months in advance, but somehow 3 seats became available 4 days before it sailed. The ship was absolutely full with not a single empty berth. Among the 658 passengers were 6 Indian princes and maharajas, but Baba met none of them during his voyage, and his presence on board was kept a secret. On this voyage, his cabin was comfortable, quiet, and secluded, as desired, and he ate in his room. As soon as this ship reached open sea, Baba began chalking out a schedule for the Westerners' stay in Nasik and drew up a list of individual duties for each person. A fellow passenger, Jay Turner of the Associated Press and Reuters, who had met Baba in Bombay 4 years before, saw Chanji and asked him where Meher Baba was. At first, Chanji tried to put him off and told him Baba was in Nasik, but then Baba agreed to permit Turner a brief meeting to pay his respects and shake Baba's hand on the morning of the 13th, provided he did not disclose Baba's presence on board the ship to any of the other passengers. Baba would take a morning and evening stroll, and the ship passed Aden as he was standing on the deck late in the afternoon of 19 November. The following day, Baba expounded on his work at the Rahuri Ashram. It is all a game of consciousness, directing the spiritual consciousness of the God-intoxicated musts toward material consciousness by my physical service to them, and uplifting the material consciousness of others to God consciousness by my spiritual guidance to them. Thus, my infinite consciousness works 2 ways. This present activity at the Rahuri Ashram is my latest external activity before I speak. I have called the Westerners to India to see and share in my work. They are to be trained in a spiritually made practical, in a spirituality made practical. And although it will not be a crown of thorns for them, it won't be a bed of roses either. Spirituality has its inherent difficulties, but my love and guidance will render it smooth and easy for them. So to make others render service, I myself have to serve, to guide, instruct, and help humanity. I have to come down to their level of understanding and consciousness, and it is here that I am generally misunderstood. But even if I am misunderstood, my coming down to normal consciousness to help mankind does not in any way interfere or undermine my infinite state. For example, a graduate who has an MA degree comes down to the level of a student whom he teaches the alphabet to by writing the letters of the alphabet himself. It does not mean that he has ceased to hold an MA because he writes the alphabet. Scroll. Therefore, my spiritual infinite state remains unaffected even if I come down to human level. The present world chaos is the beginning of a spiritual manifestation. For instance, if a man develops a cataract in his eye, it curtains his vision, obstructing things, and he cannot see properly. The only remedy is to remove the curtain, which means an operation on the cataract by an eye surgeon. But before the doctor operates, he allows the cataract to ripen. Similarly, the present condition of the world is due to mankind being steeped and drowned in materialism, indulging in self interest and greed, which has drawn a curtain before the eye, obstructing spiritual vision and development. It has worsened to the point of creating chaos all over the world, which is a clear indication of the cataract being quite ripe for surgery. This is what's happening in the world today. When the operation is performed, the disease of ignorance, greed, and lust will be removed, and the vision of the world will once again be restored to see things from a spiritual perspective as they are meant to be. The doctor is ready to operate. He waits only for the cataract to ripen. India is a land of spirituality, and spirituality means peace, love, and brotherhood. Then how could the world expect to receive this message from India when Indians fight among themselves over childish questions? The dissension between Mohammedans and Hindus, the friction between the Brahmins and the untouchables, all indicate and imply that India is a land of dissension and divisions, controlled by the monster of caste, creed, and class. The real swara, self-rule, is the swaraj of the soul. When spiritual freedom is gained, moral, mental, and material self-rajas automatically follow. So let India rise above these petty questions, put them right, imparting spirituality to the confused, tormented, and ignorant world. Saints, masters, spiritual perfect souls always help humanity through their infinite love, and their task could be rendered easier by the cooperation of the masses to act according to their teachings. The next morning, Saturday, 21st November 1936, Turner, the Associated Press reporter, came again to interview Baba in his cabin at 9 a.m. He wanted to ask about the war, but before he could do so, Baba directed Chanji to read out a list of specific points which Baba had just dictated from his board. Turner was greatly impressed. Certain questions he wanted to ask had just been answered. Turner asked Baba, "Did you know I was about to ask that question?" Baba spelled out in reply, "I know everything." Baba permitted the reporter to ask a few more questions. "When will you speak?" Turner asked. "In about 2 years." "When will your manifestation be?" 12 years after I speak. These past 12 years of silence were for the preparation of the same. What will be its effect? Convincing. At once or gradually? Gradually, like the rain and crops. Rain falls spontaneously in showers at a time, but the crops take time to grow. So the effects and fruits of my work and manifestation will grow gradually as time goes on during these 12 years of my manifestation. Will there be a war before you speak? Yes. Is it necessary? Yes, unavoidable. None will win, none will lose, but it will create an awakening for a better and higher ideal. All the false ideas of race, color, nationality, nationalism, etc., will be eradicated and destroyed, and universal human brotherhood and idealism will be established. I shall lead the way for those who seek, Baba concluded. At the end of his 25-minute interview, Turner sought permission to formally introduce some prominent fellow passengers, such as Louis Bamachi, a famous explorer and scientist, and Evangeline Booth, the worldwide head of the Salvation Army. But it is not recorded whether Baba agreed to meet them, although no doubt they saw him on deck. After 11 days at sea, Baba, Chanji, and Kaka arrived in Bombay at noon on 23rd November and were met by Adi Sr. and Adi Jr. Behram's wife, Perrin, had given birth to a baby girl 6 days before, so before visiting Memo, Baba was driven to Parekh Hospital at Ketwadi to see them and his new niece. Baba named the child Sunu, but he later changed her name to Gulnar when Memo requested that the girl be named after Shireen's mother, Golandun. After meeting Memo at Dadar, Baba proceeded to the Dadachanji's house, where he had lunch. At 5 o'clock, Baba was driven to Nasik in Rustam's Pontiac by Adi Sr. In Nasik on Tuesday, 24 November 1936, Baba discussed the visit of the Western lovers at length with Rustam and Franey. After meeting Rustam and Franey's children, Baba was driven to Rahuri and then Meherabad, where he arrived at noon. Baba informed the men and women Mandali in Meherabad about the impending arrival of the Europeans and Americans and his own wishes for the celebration of his birthday. He stated, "On my next birthday, I wish to feed 20,000 poor, and I will bow down to them. I have a special reason for doing this. It is stooping to conquer, quote unquote," Baba punned. If I stoop to these 20,000 poor and destitute, the whole world will stoop to me. I intend creating a giant typhoon and therefore need the help of the Mandali to work as they have never worked before. Either I shall do this, if the Mandali cooperate with me fully and completely, or I will close up everything and work aloof and all alone. This is not going to be anything done. There is not going to be anything done on a halfway measure. It is a question of going to the extremes either way. The foremost point to be remembered by all is that the enthusiasm of the Westerners should not be checked or given any setback. There is no question of any of them going backwards, but since persons here are likely to become jealous over anything spectacularly successful, every precaution is to be taken to maintain the Westerners' spirit and mood, which they are looking forward to their stay here, with which they are looking forward to their stay here. My plan is first to get them completely and comfortably adapted to the new surroundings, situation, and climate before starting the real working. For the first month, they are to take rest and feel settled in, and then for about 5 months, a course of fixed and regular but light duties will be given to each according to individual capabilities. It will be common to all to rise early every morning and meditate for an hour. They also will be tutored for another hour in Urdu for some future work. Certain days have been fixed when I will be with them at Nasik, or they will be with me at Rahuri and Meherabad, and thus become acquainted with all three phases of my present working: Nasik, Rahuri, and Meherabad. When at Meherabad, they will do as other Mandali members do while eating, sitting, etc. The Western men will mix with the Naichinas, the men Mandali, at Lower Meherabad, and the Western ladies with the Upper Nas, the women, at Upper Meherabad. After 5 months, the servant boys, butlers, cooks, and laundrymen at Nasik will be dispensed with, and the Westerners will do their own cooking, cleaning, and laundry themselves, besides giving their services in the hospital, which is intended to be opened by that time. The special feature of this hospital will be that the hopelessness in the worst possible condition of diseases will be collected and kept as patients under medical treatment. On the evening of 25 November 1936, Baba's message to the Associated Press was broadcast on the radio in a daily news bulletin from Delhi. The Mandali at Meherabad heard it being broadcast, and Baba too was likely listening. The following day, Baba was driven to Rahuri and then Nasik, stopping en route to greet Gulmai at Kush Recorders and the Sata family at Akbar Press. At Rahuri, Baba saw the new one-room brick quarters, which had been constructed while he was in Europe. His new residence, built on a platform, was the only permanent building in the ashram, amidst the thatched huts where the Mandali and inmates resided. It became known as the Rahuri cabin. In Nasik, while out for a morning stroll with Chanji on 28 November, Baba was joined by a Brahmin teacher who did not recognize him. The Brahmin, a learned authority on the Hindu scriptures, mentioned the arrival of Meher Baba as reported in the newspapers, and then opined how wrong it was to worship a human being. He launched into a long lecture on true spirituality, quoting Sanskrit verses. Baba stopped him and told Chanji to reveal his identity and convey his blessings. The Brahmin was abashed and turned pale. His previous scornful attitude turned reproachful, and he even stated, as he fell at Baba's feet, "It is my great good fortune to have your darshan." Baba was not allowing anyone to touch his feet, but he made an exception for the learned Brahmin and permitted it. You want to try another reader? Picture of Baba's passport. And I'll continue a little more. Before going to Europe, Baba had written to the close Western lovers, chosen to come to India, that he had brought property in Nasik for their stay. This was made possible by Noreena's financial contribution, the money having come from the proceeds of her selling her husband's perfume company. In July of 1936, Baba had informed them, "Beloved selves, Kaka, the eternal uncle, wishes to deliver his first and last lecture in English. His English is cannibal English, which kills one with laughter and eats up one's sorrows for the time being. He has been writing it the last 2 nights and rehearsing it the last 2 mornings. Nothing but 'you must obey Baba, you must obey Baba' was the only sound intelligible, and which inspired me, the Infinite One, to tell you the few following words. I have purchased the ideal property in Nasik. It is situated amidst beautiful surroundings with splendid scenery all around. With the Western group in Nasik, the Eastern group in Meherabad, and myself in Rahuri, midway between Meherabad and Nasik, these will comprise the nucleus of my activities for the next 5 years. The center in Nasik will have nothing in common with the accepted notions concerning ashrams or spiritual retreats, or the strict, dry, rigid discipline usually governing them. Its special feature lies in its having my personal living guidance, the same as Jesus gave his disciples. As stated above, although life here would be divested of strict, rigid discipline, and yet elastic enough in matters of physical comforts, all the same, it would be trying enough in the question of indirect spiritual instructions from me, which might even include external services to humanity, such as nursing the sick or the crippled, helping the poor and destitute. In short, I will personally guide you according to the aptitude, mentality, and capability of each. I want all who are dear to me to pass through certain experiences that are necessary. Be prepared to stay with me in India for a period ranging from 1 to 5 years, so long as each of you can conveniently stay, taking into consideration your home conditions, family, and other attachments. You will need to provide yourselves with traveling expenses in India, which will come to approximately £6 per month for each. And lastly, to live strictly in accordance with my injunctions. The life in India near me will be most interesting, and it will enable you to see my work and share in my work. Perhaps someone else would like to read. It looks like maybe Vijay is about the only other reader right now. Well,
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Yeah, okay. Got it. Because the unmute was not functioning. Yeah, I can. Nasik and Cairns. All possible arrangements have been made to make the physical life easy for you. And though it will not be a crown of thorns, it will not be a bed of roses either. You will be shown from time to time the three phases of my activities in the three different retreats: the modern Nasik, the primitive Rahuri, and the simple Meherabad. None of you must be afraid of anyone or anything, whatever happens. You should be firm in your faith and not let the criticism of those who are against you upset you. If you surrender, do not then assert, Baba must take care of my head. Baba must look after my family. I must not fall ill. I must not die. Member of my family must not die either. These assertions would indicate lack of faith. The faith of a disciple in his master, whom he considers to be all-knowing, all-powerful. You can rely on me and leave it to me, but do not make it conditional. Let me end by stressing the one and only thing that matters. Try to obey my instructions implicitly. Do not argue, just do as I say and everything will be okay. Garrett Ford's letter of 25th July 1936 is perhaps reflective of how happy everyone felt about Baba's decision to call them to India. Page change. Baba, your letter forwarded to us by Norina brought much joy. To think that the time has come for all, worthy and unworthy, to take our places by your side and help with your great work is an occasion for the greatest possible happiness. Everything else in our daily lives fades into insignificance, and we will count the days between now and the time we will find ourselves being greeted by your loving smile. I come to you with a feeling of vast relief, like a child coming home from school. I want to stay with you for a long time, to cast aside the life I have known like old, worn out garments and seek the inspiration of your teaching with the same attitude that I would accept the interval between incarnations. For this to me is an interval between incarnations. Only there will be two incarnations while in the same body. The life I have known and lived up to this point, and the life I will know and live when the time comes for me to go forth again into the world as one of your workers. Next. I expect to be wholly changed, my mental, physical, and spiritual aspects transmuted utterly. I think I will not want to come back until you send me. The glamour of this existence is gone. I have seen everything, known celebrities, had money, experienced mild fame, but enough to know what it is like, laughed and have been drunken, known love, faced tragedy, glanced at the heights, and walked through the gutters of life. What more is there to Maya than these? When I come to you, I intend to burn all my bridges. Malcolm, Jean, and Ruano faced the dilemma of insufficient funds to make the voyage to India. But with Garrett's financial help, they too were able to come. In the interim, doubts about Baba's intention had troubled some of the group in England. After Baba left Europe, Kitty wrote to him on behalf of the English group expressing their concern that he would send them back after a short stay with him in India, as he had done previously, even though he had indicated they would be staying for more than a year. Baba sent back the following reply. 26 November 1936. Dear Saroja, I feel so disappointed that with all their love for me, Kimco would not understand in spite of explanations of some important thing so clearly given. I was so happy you all eventually agreed to come, but the peculiar attitude of Kimco, always so typical of taking all things, however serious, so lightly, even when I want you to take things seriously and understand, at times causes me great pain. Your heart is so wonderful, always feeling so deeply and truly, and responsive to the call and understanding. But the peculiar mind of yours all at times wobbles and tries to shake your faith, while your love revives it all again and afresh. One moment you feel quite prepared to do and withstand anything. The next moment you hesitate with its and buts and feel depressed and worried and unnecessarily. But I will see that this eternal struggle between the head and the heart for you as well as for all others who suffer from the same weakness ends eventually in the victory of the heart over the head and brings about a blending of the two. In fact, I am working at it, suffering myself almost all the while by being misunderstood every moment and in every act of compassion, in raising the consciousness and understanding of humanity to a higher level. Even my own who have known me and have been in my closer contact. Scroll. Understand in spite of explanation of some important things so clearly given. I was so happy you all eventually agreed to come, but the peculiar attitude of Kimco, always so typical of taking all things, however serious so lightly, even when I want you to take things seriously and understand, at times causes me great pain. Your heart is so wonderful, always feeling so deeply and truly and responsive to the call and understanding, but that peculiar mind of yours at times wobbles and tries to shake your faith while your love revives it all again. And afresh, one moment you feel quite prepared to do and withstand anything. The next moment you hesitate with it, ifs and buts, and feel depressed and worried unnecessarily. But I will see that this eternal struggle between the head and the heart for you as well as for all others who suffer from the same weakness ends eventually in the victory of the heart over the head and brings about a blending of the two. In fact, I am working at it, suffering myself almost all the while my being misunderstood every moment, and in every act of compassion, in raising the consciousness and understanding of humanity to a higher level, even by my own who have known me and have been in my closer contact. Just a little individual effort to understand and do as I say would save so much trouble and pains for me and for all. Nasik and Keynes. In England at this time, a scandal was brewing when the King of England, Edward VIII, was revealed to be having an affair with Wallis Warfield Simpson, an American suing her husband for divorce. On 6 December 1936, Baba remarked that it would be good on the part of the king to give up his crown to marry the woman he professed to love, rather than prove false to his promise to marry her. That would be a real mardi, heroic act, Baba stated. On 8 December, Norina, Elizabeth, Jean, and Malcolm, along the Rano and Nani, arrived in Bombay on the steamer Elasia. They brought two dogs with them, Elizabeth Boston Terrier Kippy and Anita's white Siberian Husky Canute, which she had given to Baba in Switzerland. About 50 Bombay lovers gathered at the docks to receive the Americans. Rustam and Freni were there and, acting as their host, took them to the Majestic Hotel. Although the group was tired, they had been ordered by Baba to register at the American consulate, go sightseeing in Bombay, and then to go to a movie that night. The next day, Rustam drew the group to Igatpuri since the facilities at Meher retreat in Nasik were not yet ready. Another person drew a white V8 Ford that Elizabeth had brought on the ship along with a trailer. Baba was driven to Igatpuri by Adi Senior to greet them on the morning of the 10th. And he then returned to Nasik. That afternoon, the group also visited the Nasik ashram after seeing where they would be staying, returned to Igatpuri. When Baba visited his American lovers, he was wearing his old patched Kamli wool coat. His pockets were stuffed with letters and telegrams, and Baba smilingly pulled out some and quaved, "This is my post office." After 2 days, the group went to stay at Bangla in Bandardara, where the climate was cooler and more comfortable. From Nasik, Baba came to stay at Bandardara for 5 days. On 14 December, accompanied by Bhagirath, 2 days later, Garrett Nadain, Tolstoy, and Grand Duchess Mary Pavlovna arrived from America on the Conte Verde. Grand Duchess Mary, 46, was an acquaintance of Nadain's, a Russian aristocrat of a Romanov family who had likewise immigrated to America. Next. Nasik and Keynes. She was a former businesswoman and was then working as a freelance photojournalist. Although Mary had correspondence with Babu, after meeting him, she decided not to stay in Nasik, as she had become uneasy about what living conditions would be like there. She was afraid that life in an ashram would mean a loss of her privacy and individuality. Because she was once wealthy and had been exploited, the Duchess suspected Baba of being like Rasputin. When he advised her to abandon her plans to travel in India and come instead to Nasik for a rest, inviting her to help with the magazine he intended starting. Mary, uh, Mary mistrusted Baba's intention. Mary mistrusted Baba's intention and mistook this as his attempt to launch a project using her name. Failing to see the great opportunity before her, the Grand Duchess stayed at Bandardhara for only 4 days and traveled in other parts of India, but she was never to be in Baba's contact again. Garrett was full of questions about what constituted spirituality, renunciation, and the spiritual path. On Thursday, 17 December 1936, Baba stated to the group while directing his comments to Ford, divinity is not devoid of humanity. It lifts mankind to God. Nor does spirituality necessarily imply the renunciation of worldly activities. True spirituality signifies the internal renunciation of mundane desires. Mere external renunciation, asceticism, does not lead to spirituality. Perfection is not perfection if it tries to escape from the entanglement by shrinking from the dual expression of nature. The perfect one must assert his dominion over all illusion. However attractive and however powerful, a perfect being functions with complete detachment in the midst of most intense activity and in contact with all forms of life. Baba would ask individuals to tell amusing stories, and Garrett was pleasantly surprised at Baba's keen sense of humor. Baba smilingly reminded him, divinity includes all that is beautiful and gracious. How then could you expect a perfect being to be devoid of a sense of humor? Satisfied, Foote replied that he understood. When the Westerners had first arrived at Bhandardhara, Baba had instructed each person to go up alone for 5 to 10 minutes and sit in a relaxed position, attempting to make the mind utterly blank. On the 17th, he stated, don't think of anything, not even of me, calling their attention to the water flowing over the dam. Baba said, if you find it difficult to stop the flow of thoughts, listen to the water flowing over the rocks, but be sure you are thoroughly relaxed.
Thank you, Vijay. Marvin, do you want to read next?
Sure. After a few days,
Marvin, at least, am I echoing now? Can you hear me? Am I echoing
Yeah.
now?
you can, yes.
Oh, okay. I'll read them.
You are echoing.
Oh, I'm echoing. Okay, fine. Go ahead, Marvin.
Somebody wanted to read. Go ahead, please. All right, well, I guess I'm going to read then. After a few days, Baba asked how the exercise was going. Some were having trouble. He urged them to continue to try, stating, "The difficulty in realizing God lies in its infinite simplicity. Your difficulty is not your fault, and you need not worry about it. It happens because your mind has been accustomed for ages to continually thinking and holding you in its command. If you cannot do so, I will help you, but I want you to try without straining, keeping yourself relaxed. Don't concentrate. Concentration produces ecstasy and trance and spiritual experience. Making the mind blank produces peace. It makes it possible for one to enter the path. It is similar to climbing a mountain. When you reach the foot, before you start your ascent, you lay down your burden. When the mind becomes relaxed, there is a tendency to doze. We must make the mind a blank consciously and at will. After all, he said with a smile, I did not bring you all the way to India to show you the sights. Explaining further about the mind, Baba said, the whole creation is the result of the thinking mind. Mind binds you and mind liberates you, binds you to desires and liberates you from the same. Two days passed in the master's intimate company before Baba departed from Dardara for Nasik on 19 December. He explained to the group, every one of you has to help in my work according to your individual capacity, and the extent to which you will remain in the world will be determined by the kind of work which you are destined to perform. I will teach you how to move in the world, yet be at all times in inward communion with me as the infinite being. As part of your training, you will have to experience both the comforts of Nasik and the discomforts of Rahuri and Meherabad, and be detached from each. Baba concluded, don't worry and don't hurry. He then left in the Pontiac at 1 p.m. with Bhagarat and the driver. Photo of Baba in Bandardara. The Westerners left Bandardara on the 22nd and were taken to MEHER retreat in Nasik. The building where they were to stay was called Sarzat. It had been constructed behind the main bungalow called Manzil. It was a rectangular structure with 12 rooms, each furnished with a box spring bed, dresser, cupboard, writing table, and chair, an electric light, and other conveniences. In addition, every 2 rooms shared a bathroom with a flush toilet and hot and cold running water. Baba had taken care in seeing that all possible amenities were provided to the Westerners, which was in stark contrast to the simple and often uncomfortable conditions the Eastern Mandali had to live with at Meherabad. In London, Baba had described the outstanding features of the Nasik ashram, warning the Westerners that they would have to adopt a simple life. But on their arrival, they discovered that Baba had provided for their comfort in every minute way. Rano recollected, when we arrived in India, we were under the impression that we would be sleeping on the floor and living under bad, austere conditions. So we had come prepared for this with our sleeping bags, etc. When Baba took us to see the Nasik building, we were stunned and surprised at the comforts Baba had provided. Some of the Westerners had imagined a more ascetic lifestyle. On Thursday, 23rd December 1936, Baba addressed their misconceptions. I want you to lead a simple life here in India. Then, when you return to the West, you may resume your accustomed life there. Yet you must be unaffected by either. Scroll, please. In view of this, you may wonder why I have arranged these comforts for you. If I required you to sleep on the floor, for example, the body would rebel and in turn react upon the mind. Such sudden drastic changes would make it difficult for me to impart truths to you through the explanations I intend to give you, and your mind would not be able to grasp them. I will therefore gradually withdraw these comforts from you and later return them to you again. The world is a slave to needs. The needs must become your slaves. You must learn to use modern conveniences, not be used by them. I do not want you to give up your needs, but I want you to be free of them. So at first you may feel confused, tired, restless, or blank, but don't worry. Soon I will begin guiding you and giving you duties and work which will make you feel content. Once I start, nothing can stop me. So rest as much as you can until January 15th. On the 16th of January, work will commence in earnest. From the 16th, you will have to begin getting up at 6:30 a.m. and retiring at 9:30 p.m. and carry out the duties which will be given to each of you. From time to time, I will take you to interesting places and beautiful caves in the hills near Nasik, where rishis used to reside and meditate. But until my birthday, I do not want you to go out without my permission. You may feel confined, but it is for your own benefit. The visits to Mehrabad and Rahuri start from the 5th of January. On my birthday, I will give grain and a piece of cloth to 15,000 people. All of you will have to contribute in the work of packaging the bundles. The next day, Bob explained about his work. Remember about keeping time. In the beyond state, time and space are nil, non-existent. In the sphere of duality, time, space, cause, and effect exist. Therefore, when I work in the sphere of duality for the upliftment of humanity, I am bound superficially by time and space. Consequently, I may also appear limited at times, but in reality, I continually experience oneness and the infinite state of the beyond. I work at fixed times for my circle, but for the universe, no time is fixed. When I work for those in duality, time counts. So when I ask you to abide by time, it means you have the benefit of working for the circle. Always I give the mandali a fixed time to do certain things. Sailing aboard the Rawalpindi, Kitty, Margaret, Delia, Tom, along with Will and Mary, arrived in Bombay from London at 5:30 on the evening of 24 December 1936. They were met at the dock by Chanji and about 50 Bombay lovers, and after a night's rest were escorted to Nasik, reaching there at noon Christmas Day. The same day, T.A. Raman, an editor of the newspaper, The Evening News of India, interviewed Narina, Nadine, and Garrett. He had also approached Baba with several questions the previous day. Raman commented that there was too much so-called spirituality in India. The following is his conversation with Baba. Raman cynically said to Baba, "What we need in India is a holiday from things of the spirit." Baba answered with a smile, spelling out, "I will not give a holiday, but permanently retire the forms and rituals of different religions on which India blames half her troubles." What then is your philosophy about? I have no philosophy. If you have no new philosophy to preach, what is your job? Next page. My job. My job is to awaken the feeling of godliness in humanity. Raman said, but let us not forget the poverty of our country and the fact that we rank so low in the community of nations. Baba replied, our miseries are the product of man's selfishness and greed. If we live the life of God, these economical disparities will vanish. If all men decide to help each other, sacrifices will become easier and irregularities of wealth and opportunity will vanish. Why don't you break your self-imposed silence and preach in the marketplace? Every great change must be carefully timed. How else could it be With the scroll, with the greatest revolution in the mind of man. The time of preaching in the marketplace too will come, but only after the world has been humbled and purified by a carnage greater than any the world has yet seen. For years I have predicted that a war is definite. It will be shorter but far more terrible than the last one, and India will be radically affected, as a result of which social and economic conditions in the country will be revolutionized. The First World War was not enough to bring about a change of heart in man. The world, purged of its pride, will listen to reason only after an even more terrible purgatory. I repeat, a global holocaust will engulf the world. So that is your opinion? The journalist asked. Looking directly at Raman, Baba smiled and spelled out, "My son, I have no opinion to offer. I know." The reporter had come to challenge Meher Baba, but left impressed and moved by the depth of feelings and genuine love of the Westerners toward Baba and the Mandali. His article appeared in the Evening News on 7 January 1937. On the night of the 25th of December, there was a Christmas dinner. Baba sat, scroll. Baba sat in the middle of a long table with the whole group. The Westerners had brought various presents for Baba, which they placed before him. Baba's mood was joyful as he unwrapped each present and then redistributed them among the group. Franny had cooked special vegetarian dishes and baked a cake. After dinner, Baba asked Kaka to give a short speech in English. Kaka barely knew the language, but nevertheless bellowed out some short exhortations in broken English, which afforded much amusement to all. Cognizant of the Westerners' habit of arguing, questioning, and suggesting, the gist of Kaka's remarks was, "No suggest, no discuss, just obey." Everyone chuckled, but Baba said, "Let's see how well you will be able to deliver a speech in Urdu in a few months." After the meal, Baba stated, "My love flows eternally to all humanity, but at this particular moment, we will remember those of the group who are physically absent." After a few moments of silence, perhaps remembering Christ, Baba commented, "I am crucified every moment. I am continually crucified and continually taking birth." Thereafter, Baba personally led the group to the Sarzat building and assigned single rooms to each. Kitty, Delia, Margaret, Tom, Malcolm, Jean, Will, Mary, Nadine, Garrett, and later Ruano were each given a single room. One room was kept vacant as an editorial office for Garrett and Malcolm. Marina and Elizabeth shared a room in the main Manzil bungalow not far from Sarzat, where Ruano and Nani had their own rooms. Baba had a private room and a bath in an adjacent attached building. The Eastern Mandali had quarters elsewhere, and Franny, Rustam, and their children stayed in a small cottage near the main bungalow. On Saturday, 26 December 1936, Baba spoke to the group about each paying their share of the expenses of the Nashik ashram. It was approximately $30 per month, and some felt inclined to pay more. Later, he explained about giving him gifts. What you give to the master on his birthday is dakshina. Gifts given by members of the circle on that occasion do not benefit them directly because, being members of the circle, they do not need it. But when gifts are given, they benefit those closely connected with them. For example, if Delia makes a gift to me on that occasion, the spiritual benefit touches her mother. After the 15th of January, I will be explaining many things which Kitty should take down in shorthand for Nani to type and give to Garrett. Garrett and Malcolm are going to edit a magazine. It will be unique. Baba explained to his Western lovers about their stay in MEHER retreat and added, I will come here to see you once or twice a week, and thereafter less frequently. I am quite busy with Meherabad and Rahuri. In Rahuri, I have to look after the musts and the mad. I do this work very attentively, and the place needs my personal presence. Baba concluded, being the avatar, I have a bad habit of keeping an eye on everything minutely. Although the Westerners were thrilled at being in India, they were disappointed to learn that Baba would not be with them more often. At 2 p.m, Baba left Nasik for Rahuri. Chummy, the pet Cocker Spaniel that Baba had purchased in Los Angeles 2 years before, died at Meherabad at 8 p.m. on 28 December. Baba was present and gave Chummy a spoonful of brandy with his own hands to ease his pain. The dog was buried at Upper Meherabad the next day. On the 29th, Narina and Elizabeth, accompanied by Kaka and Ramju, drove to Rahuri in the Ford Elizabeth had brought. A meeting of the Mandali Maintenance Trust was to be held at Rahuri that day, and they were to attend. When they arrived, Baba gave Elizabeth and Norina a tour of the ashram. He showed them the Rahuri cabin and explained about his work with the musts and mad, about some of the mad who were lepers. Baba commented, however infected these men are, it does not affect me or my men helping me to bathe them. When I wash the mad at Rahuri, I am washing them universally. Baba pointed out which inmates were mad, suffering from a mental disorder, and which were spiritually advanced musts, God intoxicated, remarking, through some blows a breeze, a breeze of longing for God. On occasion, Baba would permit Elizabeth to take photographs, and she and Narina were deeply impressed at how lovingly Baba treated the mad and the God mad alike. Baba had lunch with them at a long table under the trees. After the trust meeting, Narina and Elizabeth returned to Nasik. In Nasik, the following schedule of rules were posted at the retreat for the Westerners. 6:30 a.m. rise, 8 a.m. breakfast, 12 p.m. lunch, the group ate together, 7 p.m. dinner, 9:30 p.m. sleep. No one should sit in the sun between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. because of the strong rays. Till February 25th, none of the Western devotees to walk beyond the property boundaries. None of the Western devotees to converse with visitors unless ordered by Baba. None of the Western devotees to receive or invite guests for meals or to stay overnight unless ordered by Baba. No one to enter the kitchen. Complaints to be referred to Narina, who is given overall charge of the ashram. For individual errands in Nasik or Bombay, referred to the office. Access to the storeroom can be at any time during the day. Ask for the key at the office. No one is allowed to use the automobiles without informing the office. Baba kept Adi Jr., Chanji, and Kalangad in Nasik to assist the Westerners, along with Rustam, Franey, and Ramju. And perhaps we can stop the reading at this point. How's that sound? Mona, why don't we end the